Hello and welcome to today's presentation, Emotional Money Mistakes During Divorce and Widowhood. We are going to learn how to navigate the emotional situations of divorce and widowhood with our clients to ensure that they make wise financial decisions during these difficult life transitions. So our learning objectives for today is we're going to gain an understanding of the Kubler-Ross model of grief. And this is so that you can recognize your client's emotional state and guide them to make good financial choices. You're also going to learn the three most common money mistakes that clients make during divorce and learn the two big emotional money mistakes that your clients might make during widowhood. So my name is Christine Lucan, the financial lifeguard. I am a money and emotions expert. I am the founder of the Financial Dignity Movement. I'm a certified financial counselor with over 12 years of experience coaching individuals and couples. I'm an active member of the Financial Therapy Association and author of multiple books, including Money is Emotional, Prevent Your Heart from Hijacking Your Wallet. And I've also experienced the stress and heartache that come from the breakup of a long-term relationship. And I'll be sharing some of those insights later on in today's training. So when we have death and divorce going on with our clients, they are typically reeling from the shock of loss of their spouse. And this might bring forth behaviors around money that don't seem to make sense at all. And so emotions are on overdrive during these life transitions. And so what is going on inside their head, right? This is one of the big questions I always get from other financial professionals. So we have these emotional drivers that are going on with people. And one of the things that I like to remind folks is that the moment of decision happens in the same part of our brain that processes emotion. So we really can't take emotion completely out of the decision-making process. But it is helpful for us to understand how our clients are making decisions and how we can mitigate some of these dangerous money behaviors and help them to make better decisions. So people typically take action to avoid pain or to increase pleasure. Now, usually during these times of death and divorce, avoiding pain is the stronger driver of behavior. So you may want to ask yourself, what pain or discomfort is your client trying to avoid by making this particular decision? It's also vitally important that these clients who are going through divorce or death of a spouse, that they be seeing a mental health professional. So whether that's a therapist, a counselor, or even just being part of a support group, it is vitally important that they are receiving this type of emotional support. My clients who do receive these types of resources usually make better decisions with their money. So it is important to have referral sources at the ready. So if you are interacting with your client before they have connected with a counselor or a therapist or a support group, and they don't know where to turn, that you have already created relationships ahead of time with these types of individuals, that you can make that referral. All right, let's talk about understanding the stages of grief. And the reason why we want to talk about this is because both divorce and death of a spouse, it involves loss. You know, whether it's the physical loss of a long-term partner or the loss of their marriage relationship. And sometimes there are multiple losses in these scenarios. So, for example, I recently had a divorcing woman as a client, and she and her husband owned a business together, and they both actively worked in that business. So the husband initiated the divorce, and unfortunately, he was having an affair with an employee who worked for the business. So he basically told his soon to be ex wife that he would continue to pay her salary, but he didn't want her coming to work anymore. He also decided that he wanted to keep the family home. Um, and, so of course he was going to buy her out of the business. So my client was simultaneously dealing with three losses, right? The loss of her home, the loss of her job, and the loss of her marriage all at the same time. And none of it was anything that she initiated. And so, we have to be looking at not just the primary loss, but what are the other losses that are there? And a lot of times with divorce, there can be things like, loss of certain friends or, extended family members. So we need to be looking at this as a whole and understanding that, you know, obviously we know that death is a loss and that there's grief, but this also occurs with divorce as well. So, we're going to talk about the 5 stages of grief, and your client might go through some or all of these stages in any order, and they could return to particular stages depending on what they are experiencing. And certain ones they might skip over altogether. So, this is known as the Kubler-Ross model of grief. It's pretty standard in psychology circles, so you may have heard of it before. So the first stage is called denial. And so your client might refuse to accept the fact that the loss has occurred. They might minimize or even deny the situation. The best response to clients who are in denial is delivering the truth to them with a sense of compassion. Now, they might not necessarily be in denial of the particular event itself, but it might be the surrounding effects, or the things that that loss has caused. Um, they might be denying not necessarily the event itself, but some of the effects that that event might have on their situation. The second one is anger. I certainly see this a lot more in divorce situations. And so, a lot of times your client is expressing, why has this happened to me? They might become angry with themselves. They might become angry with others, especially their soon to be ex spouse, or they might even become angry with God. They might argue that the situation is unfair and blame other people for whatever it is they are grieving. Now, the third stage is bargaining, and you may or may not see your client go through this stage. Bargaining is when your client tries to change or delay the loss. Now, typically that's hard to do in a situation where their spouse is deceased, but you might see this in a situation where their spouse has a terminal illness. And so with bargaining, your client is trying to change or delay the loss. So in a divorce situation, they might try to convince their spouse to return after a breakup, even if it's an unhealthy dynamic in that relationship. And so stage number 4 is depression. So the person recognizes and mourns their loss. Your client might isolate themselves and spend time crying and grieving. And this is a normal part of the grieving process. And so please note that when we talk about this model of grief and depression, this is not necessarily clinical depression. Um, you know, we ourselves and our clients can experience periods where our moods are depressed and not as joyful and happy as they usually are. Um, but this is very important to tie in with these mental health resources, you know, so that they are getting the support that they need. Obviously, I'm not expecting financial planners and money coaches to be the full support system for this person, but certainly you do play a part in that. And I always have the Kleenex ready to be sure. So finally, we have acceptance. And this means that the client accepts their loss. They understand the situation logically and they've come to terms with it emotionally. Now, just because they've come to terms with it, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be happy about it. Um, but they are dealing with the situation proactively, and they are beginning to move on with their lives in this new stage. So many times when you're dealing with widowhood or divorce, your client might be handling money for the first time. It's possible that they've never had 100% responsibility for the personal finances themselves. I usually see this more commonly with women who did not work outside the home, but that's not necessarily the case 100% of the time. I have also had men who, their wives handled the finances and they didn't. So, um, but they are likely feeling ashamed or embarrassed that they don't know what to do. And so this can lead to your client withdrawing or not wanting to face financial issues head on because they don't want to look stupid, right? So, what are some warning signs? So, if we can look or listen for silence, where they go a very long period of time without acknowledging anything that you're saying. If you have that look of confusion, then obviously that is a clear sign that they probably need some clarity and some guidance. You may also get blanket agreement where they're saying, "Oh, sure, yeah, yeah, yes, I know," um, and so you may want to probe a little bit deeper, and also give them an opening to ask those questions and to say, you know, I understand that some of this stuff might be new for you, and I don't want to assume that you're understanding everything that I'm going through. And if there's anything where you don't understand, I want you to stop me and ask questions and give them permission to do that. Because I know a lot of times, those of us who are in the financial professions, in talking with our coworkers and, other people in the business, we have a tendency to rattle off a lot of acronyms and letters, and we assume that people know what we're talking about because we know what we're talking about, and most of the people in our inner circle know what we're talking about. But many times, this individual may not understand. So that's why we want to avoid jargon or acronyms and all the letters, and explain to them, exactly what things are in as simple a way as possible. Obviously, we don't want to be talking down to our clients, but we need to make sure we are connecting with them on their level. We also want to make sure that we're patient with people, especially during this time, because, there is so much overwhelm and emotion that there's almost like too much stuff to take in at one time. I've had clients who, before divorce or before the death of their spouse, they might have handled the finances themselves. They might have even worked in a financial profession. Um, but because